Your shadows look dead, flat, and wrong. That's what you're thinking, right? I'm gonna show you exactly why. I'm gonna tell you one little secret that changes literally everything. I'm Dimitri Ross, and today we're fixing the mistake that makes beginner shadows look amateur. Stay with me. Okay, here's what most drawing tutorials get wrong. They teach you shadows are just dark. Core shadow, cast shadow, done. But look at this. See this cast shadow? This is not one flat tone. There is something happening here. The old masters knew it, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. This lighter area inside the shadow, we're usually taught that you can find the reflected light only in the shadow on the object itself. But what is this then? This is also reflected light in the cast shadow. And this is what makes a drawing or a painting look real. And this is the difference between the shadow that feels real and the shadow that is painted on. Today, I will have only one light, my window in my Amsterdam studio. It's pretty dark outside, by the way, and windy. One object and a, dark surface. And I do this on purpose because it's not about fancy equipment on multi-object composition. It's about learning to see. Yeah, but before we draw, look at this. Caravaggio, 1599. Basket of Fruit. This painting is one of the most studied still lifes in art history. Look at these grape shadows. See how they're not solid black? There is light bouncing back up from the table surface onto the shadow. Caravaggio observed it. Why can't we? Here, look at this apple's cast shadow. It's dark at the edge closest to the apple, and it goes lighter as it moves away. And these leaf shadows here, so cool. Some are almost transparent because light is flooding back into them. Caravaggio didn't have photography. He didn't have fancy lighting equipment. He just observed. He looked very close. And this is what we're doing today. We're following in the footsteps of Caravaggio. Welcome to the world of classical art. Now, many of you mentioned that the music in my previous video was distracting. So today, almost no music. Just me, the setup, and the Amsterdam wind whistling through my studio window. You know, Caravaggio had candlelight and probably rats in his studio. I have natural light and the wind. We work with what we have. Anyway, let's talk about why your shadows look flat. So let's break this down step by step. I'm going to show you 7 stages of this drawing. Just a few moments where reflected light makes more sense and more difference. And let's watch the actual shadow first. See the light inside of the shadow? That's what we're trying to capture. So stage 1, observation. And I'm doing what? I'm looking. Where is my light source? Where is the darkest part of the cast shadow? Where do I see that reflected light in the cast shadow? Right here. You see? The shadow is darkest right under the fruit and then gets lighter as it moves away. And that's a reflected light from the table, from the walls, and from the atmosphere itself, bouncing back up into the shadow. Okay, stage 2, I map the shapes. The fruit, the table edge, and very important, the shape of the cast shadow itself. Shadows have also shapes, you know, just like objects do. When I'm drawing, I'm always trying to get the boundary of the shadow very lightly because it's just a map for where the values will go. Okay, stage 3, the core shadow on a fruit itself. This is the darkest value on the object. And this part here gets basically no direct light and no reflected light as well. And this will be my value anchor. So stage 4, I'm blocking the cast shadow, and this is where the fun part begins. But listen, look, I am not making the whole shadow dark. It's not solid black. I'm using a middle dark tone because I know that my reflected light will be coming later. And here is where the first mistake is when beginners draw shadows. They make the whole shadow very dark from the very beginning. But don't hurry to jump into the darkness of the shadow. Make it mid-gray and leave yourself some room and space to work on it later. It's much easier to go darker. It's like watercolor, you know, where they work from light to dark. The same here. It's much easier to go darker, but it's not always easy to go lighter. My stage 5 is where the magic happens. I'm now adding the reflected light into the cast shadow. As the shadow moves away from the object, the light from the table, from the walls bounces back up into the shadow. I'm kind of creating a gradient, lighter as we move away. This is what makes the shadow feel three-dimensional, I would say, instead of flat. Look at the difference. Same shadow, but now it has depth. It has atmosphere. And this is the reflected light. And it's secret. Now, stage 6, refining. I'm softening the transition between the core shadow and the reflected light. And in nature, these transitions, these shifts are gradual, not abrupt, not sharp. And also the reflected light is never a stripe, a sharp stripe. It's a very subtle transition, very subtle shift. And I'm looking at the actual shadow constantly. So now stage 7, the complete drawing, the core shadow on the fruit, cast shadow with reflected light, all the values working together beautifully. And this is what observation gives you. Just look closely. These are not formulas. These are not rules. Just look and draw what you see. Okay, now where it gets fun. I want you to build this skill, but not in one day, but over 7 days. And I'm calling it 7 days shadow hunt challenge. And it's very easy and it's very fun, actually. Every day for the next 7 days, you will find one shadow in your everyday life and photograph it. One shadow per day. Okay, so guys, here are the rules. Day 1 and 2, find shadows with obvious reflected light. Coffee cups on a table, fruit by the window. Make it easy. Days 3 and 4, find objects with a subtle reflected light in the shadow. It will be harder to find, but it's there. Days 5 and 6, ready? Find shadows with multiple bounced reflected lights in shadows. Objects with one light source and maybe reflection from a colored wall, 2 coffee cups on a table. The shadows, what are they reflecting? And day 7, the shadow of your choice. Find the most interesting cast shadow with reflected light in it. And yeah, you don't need to draw them, just the photographs and the observation. So with these photos, you don't have to do anything. They're just for you to observe and to learn from observing shadows. Unfortunately, there is not an option to post these photos in the comments to this video, but I will do the same challenge and I will collect my shadows, and out of my shadows, I will make a separate video in a few weeks. So I want to show you some of my favorite Baroque examples, paintings where artists really played with reflected light inside of the shadow. Example 1, Artemisia Gentileschi, Judith and her maidservant. There is a candle lighting a scene, and that's it. But look at what happens in the shadows. Behind the figures, on the fabric, the dark isn't just dark. You can see this warm, soft glow sneaking in from the candle stand or bouncing off the gold and metal around them. That's reflected light. It's tiny, but it makes everything feel alive. Next example, Rembrandt's still life with peacocks. The shadows under those birds look deep at first, but if you look a bit longer, you notice they're not black. There is this gentle, almost breathing kind of light inside of them. That's what gives the stillness so much life. Example 3, Caravaggio's Calling of St. Matthew, and everyone is talking about Christ and the divine light. And yes, they are powerful, but my favorite part is this huge shadow on the wall. Even that shadow has light in it. If you look closely, it fades softly, almost gray, where the wall bounces light back into it. It's not a hard cut, it's a living shadow. Yeah, I'm not showing you Baroque drawings because they are almost none. I'm just kidding. Disegno, drawing, was not a separate discipline as we know it now. And it wasn't usually treated as a finished artwork like it's today. And the drawing served mostly for purposes of creating a sketch for a future painting. So it was something like a middle stage between something and something. More of a process of making a painting. Now, for those of you whose brain needs more structure instead of my artistic chaos on paper, I will give you a technical diagram. It breaks down the cast shadow into its main parts: the occlusion zone, the reflection from the object, the gradient from dark to light, and the reflected light itself. Good? So before I'm good too, I want to thank all art teachers and professional artists who are watching this. And I want to say that I'm not an art teacher. I'm not a professor. I'm just a simple artist, not using academic terminology. I do it on purpose, and I tell about things the way I see and feel them. I want these ideas to be clear and approachable for beginners. And if you're an art teacher, you know it very well that many first-year art students are freezing up when you ask them what is value, what is tone. But everybody understands shading, right? So my goal here is not to sound precise and academic like you might sound when you're teaching, but to make light and shadow make sense. And if Impressionists would have followed all the correct academic rules, they probably wouldn't have been Impressionists. So to all the educators out there, I love you and I appreciate what you do. And hey, I always welcome another perspective. Observation. Train your eye to see reflected light in the shadows everywhere. Because when you start looking, when you start seeing the reflected light and cast shadows, you'll see them everywhere, in every shadow. Yeah, this is how the old masters learned, not from tutorials, but from obsessive observation. Let's do this together. So let's recap. The secret to a cast shadow that feels real is the reflected light inside of the cast shadow. It's not a trick, it's not a formula, it's observation. Next. Shadows are not flat tones. They are gradients shaped by the light bouncing from surrounding surfaces. And they're dark near the edge, lighter as they move away, and there is always reflected light inside of the cast shadow. Caravaggio knew it in 1599. Now you know it too. But here's what we haven't talked about yet. What happens when the objects, when their shadows, start talking to each other? Next week, I will be showing you the light conversation between the objects, how one fruit changes the shadow of another, and how glass transforms everything around it. This is where it gets really interesting. You won't want to miss that. So, start your 7-day shadow hunt challenge today. Subscribe so you don't miss next week's video. And if you want more classical drawing techniques in a contemporary context, then watch my other videos. I'm Dimitri Ross. Thank you for watching. Go hunt some shadows.